So welcome everybody to the fourth Backstage monthly community meetup. It's exciting to see you all here today. And before we dive right into the agenda, I just wanted to start with a quick announcement or moment of celebration rather. Some of you might already know this, but Cloud Native Computing Foundation, or CNCF, which builds sustainable ecosystems for cloud native software, recognized Spotify as a CNCF End User Award winner this year. Since we joined the community in like 2018, Spotifyers have made some contributions across various different CNCF projects, but still the most notable and the kind of flagship project of ours remains to be Backstage. So we felt like this is truly a win for all of us in the Backstage community, and it recognizes the amazing technical depth, the commitment, the energy, and all the tech excellence that you all bring to the community every day. So please join us in celebrating this award, and thank you all for your contribution across the open source ecosystem and Backstage more specifically. We wouldn't be in this place without you. So massive thank you. And yeah, quick round of applause, everybody. And we have quite some agenda to go through today. So I'm just gonna paste the link in the chat for those who don't have it handy. Here we go. So we're gonna start off with the top most voted item of the day, which is a walkthrough or demo rather from TELUS and ThoughtWorks, walking us through their journey of adopting Backstage in their company. That's going to be followed by a short Q&A, and then we're going to slide into a quick announcement from our maintainers who's been doing some work around the catalog. So they will share a quick update on what's most recent there. And then we will have another demo today, which is from another team within Spotify, walking us through the new homepage experience. And after those two demos, there's going to be some time for community issues and discussions in the chat. So there are two ways that you can influence the agenda for today. Please add your questions to the GitHub issues, or just paste them into the chat. Per what we've heard from all of you, per the experience of the past couple of sessions, GitHub seems to be a more reliable and less destructive way to get the discussions going, but I will leave it up to you to decide how to engage in the dialogue. As long as you stay engaged, everything works. And yeah, that said, Elisa, I think you have everything to get started with your presentation. So on to you if you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen here. So thank you guys for having us. It's great for us to be there. I'm Elisa Montemayor. I'm actually the PM for TELUS for the Simplified Developers Portal. As we go through the agenda, today we're here to present our vision and the product. And the evolution as we move through the presentation. We'll have Seb Barr and Jeff Norris walk us through the successes and challenges during our journey, and we'll highlight the evolution of our portal as well. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to our TELUS and ThoughtWorks team, who have been doing a great job just collaborating together to build TELUS's Simplify portal. And as you can see, we do have a big team doing great things, leveraging Backstage and building our developers experience. So thank you again to our team. As we move through our vision, so our vision is how we built a transformation outcomes and to become a central source for all of our TELUS development teams, providing tools and technologies they need to do their work more easily and effectively. The Simplify portal will provide a home for tech documentation, a control plane for projects, onboarding guides, access to tooling, technical standards, and security processes and practices. We built this portal because it will provide a self-serve onboarding for new team members, a one-stop shop for technical documentation, enables reuse and findability for all of our developers, and have access to create, manage, and evolve our technical health of everything they built. So that's a quick overview of our product and vision. I'll pass this over now to Sebar and Jeff Norris to go through our journey of Backstage.
Great. Thanks, Elisa. And it's nice to meet everyone. So again, my name is Seb Barr. I'm a solution architect with TELUS. So to start, give everybody a little bit of background. When we started this journey, one of the main goals that we had was that we wanted this to feel like a TELUS experience. We do have a goal internally at TELUS to try to provide the same look and feel and the same experience that we provide to our customers on our internal tools. So this was, we knew this would be a challenge from the start, simply because TELUS it's a deceptively simple brand, but it has quite a few I guess, fairly complex standards that need to be adhered to. We have a lot of internal style guides, and we actually have a design system internally that is not just visual design, but also composed of React components that we're supposed to actually use when implementing front ends that follow the TELUS standards. So when we evaluated all the different products and eventually settled on Backstage, we realized that this was going to be a little bit of a challenge. And so part of that was going through the I guess the existing format that Backstage uses with Material UI, and that's when we discovered the theme package. And so the team sort of took on the task of trying to adapt the Backstage theme and Material UI to the TELUS brand standards. And I think if we can go to the next slide. I think we actually quite successfully managed to accomplish this to the point where showing it to some of our internal design resources, we had individuals who thought that we had built it using our internal React components, when in fact, the ThoughtWorks team did an excellent job in essentially skinning the existing components to look and feel like TELUS.
Yeah, and as a result of this, we found that other teams within TELUS were interested in seeing what we had done so successfully using Material UI to get that TELUS look and feel. That's inspired a lot of them to look into it as an option.
For us, part of that decision as well, and it's part of the overall decision of using Backstage, is that we didn't want to build everything from scratch. We wanted to be able to benefit from community contributions and from the ongoing development in Backstage, and we wanted to be able to focus on the value of the portal and not just the underlying nuts and bolts. So being able to create that theme and having that flexibility to still meet our brand standards, but not have to build and manage everything from scratch was a really big win for us. The next thing we want to quickly touch on is content and where the content comes from. So within TELUS, we have, oh, sorry, if we can move to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. We use Contentful within TELUS. For anybody that's not familiar with it, Contentful is a headless CMS. So it is a SaaS product, provides a web app for managing content, but doesn't provide a front end. So it's essentially an API first content management platform where as the user of it, you are responsible for creating your own front end. This is the content management platform we have within TELUS. It drives TELUS.com. So it was a good fit for us as an existing tool to be able to use it to sort of provide editorial content and what we call guides within the portal. So we knew at the beginning that this wasn't something that necessarily was in Backstage existing. There was a concept of tech docs, which integrates with Markdown, but through some research internally at TELUS, we found that it was really important for us to have a content editing experience that was approachable by non-developers. Developers like to write their documentation in Markdown, but there's the concept of ownership and long-term viability of documentation, as well as the ability to bring in dedicated writing staff and resources that would be more comfortable in a traditional content management system. So through some exploration and through some work, the ThoughtWorks team essentially built plugins using Backstage's plugin architecture to allow us to use Contentful to create and manage our content and then present it within Backstage. So on top of the existing things, this is an area where we definitely did extend the platform, and we sort of built our own integration with Contentful since it was our existing in-house product.
All right, so I'm Jeff Norris. I'm a technical principal from ThoughtWorks, and I've worked very closely with Seb and the rest of the team to be able to bring about this portal. One of the things that we particularly noticed as we were doing this implementation is that having data from multiple sources causes some interesting challenges. So if we're looking at what we want to present to customers, GitHub is completely open. You can essentially write anything any way that you want. But TikTok is very opinionated. There are things that you can do in completely free form, presenting information through GitHub that doesn't immediately translate. And so we ended up with data that was in multiple repositories. The idea of the way that TechDocs tends to map is it's designed as a piece of code that lives in a repository that has documentation associated with it. We had different kinds of models in terms of the way that our content existed within our repositories. We had things like, we had some repositories that met that model of code paired with documentation, but we also had other repositories where it was basically a wiki, one giant repository that contained nothing but documentation, as well as the idea of having multiple repositories that cross-link between each other. And so when you translate it from GitHub that was designed to be seen on the GitHub area, we needed to think deeply about how you translate content that was designed specifically to be seen through GitHub when it's translated. So for example, relative URLs, how do they behave after you transform the content? And so we had a decent amount of challenges just trying to figure out what the best way to present that is. Next slide. The other aspect of that we were interested in was we have content in multiple locations, but we want to let our users be able to experience that through a single pane of glass. We have things that map more towards what you think of as a traditional TechDocs documentation, but we also have what we call guides. And as a user, you want to be able to find the content regardless of where it lives. So in our situation, we were interested in consuming content that lived in GitHub, as well as consuming content that lived in Contentful, but we wanted to have a uniform search experience. In our case, we use SwiftType as our search engine within TELUS, and we basically wanted to be able to hook that back up to content regardless of where it lives, so that we can do advanced search and filtering.
Just to quickly top up on that, the rationale for SwiftType for us is that it was an existing product, again, that we use within TELUS. So it was actually very straightforward to just sort of get that set up. And again, the ThoughtWorks team was able to build an integration there. And as Jeff mentioned, with the goal of keeping that abstract and potentially being able to add additional data sources beyond GitHub and Contentful in the future, and still having that sort of having it be presentation agnostic and being able to provide that unified experience.
Awesome, thank you. So here's an overview of our evolution for the Simplify portal. As you can see, we have done an initial launch, but this is for a small subset of our developers at TELUS, just to gain some feedback of the content, how the look and feel looks like, and all that stuff. So we're still continuing that process with a lot of our developers at TELUS. To date, our integration with Backstage, and we've onboarded a lot of technical documentation into the portal. Some upcoming development we will be focusing on Project Home, a control plane, org structures and teams, and then in the future alignment, we'll be enhancing our product just to become more of a centralized hub for all phases of our development cycle, and just to be a one-stop shop for all of our developers here at TELUS. So that is it. We will open it up to any questions.
Sure. There's a question in the chat right now asking about a timeline on when we started developing Backstage and when we started rolling out. So time has been a bit blurry during the pandemic, but if I recall properly, I think we're probably about maybe 8 months or so, maybe a little bit more, like, because maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably somewhere in the 8 to 10 months from the time that the project started to when we chose Backstage to when we started developing. We soft launched the version that we have now about a month and a half ago, just around the end of March.
And one of the things that we found as we were going through that launch is you can, because of the plugin nature and the types of things that we expose through Backstage, you can release with, say, just documentation and layer on additional things as you want to. And so you don't have to have everything perfect. You have to have a valuable core that you can start to share.
And we're also already treating this as a bit of an inner source project at TELUS. So we actually have 2 other teams separate from the core team right now that are starting to develop their own plugins with the intention of eventually merging them in and being able to deploy their own, their own dashboards or their own applications within Backstage. One of the big advantages we see to the platform is that it provides somewhat of a shell for internal applications. So we handle things like SSO, which at TELUS can be challenging and complicated to integrate into an application. So we try to reduce the number of times we have to do that for individual apps. and as well as things like user management and permissions and all of that. So we're pretty excited about what we have so far, and really looking forward to kind of having it become this shared home for a lot of things.
And now you're getting bombarded with questions.
Yeah, I'm going to read and try to catch up a little bit. David is asking us if we create any educational materials or incentives during our initial launch. So yes, we have. So right now we are still kind of in soft launch, so we haven't been talking too widely about it, but it is our plan to do an internal roadshow. And have a presentation and really talk about some of the benefits and advantages and the goals of the portal. A little bit of what we talked about today, it'll be the similar theme. One of the, we did upfront, I guess we didn't talk about it too much, but one of the problems we're trying to solve at TELUS is that we have, we're a very large company. We have lots of departments. We have lots of departments that have development teams and that have technical resources. And right now, a lot of our documentation is sort of scattered. Teams have wikis, teams have GitHub, teams have Confluence. Some teams build their own microsites. We use other products to handle API documentation. So we are looking to bring this all under one roof and try to give developers, especially new developers and people that are, that are starting their onboarding journey, that initial path into figuring out what they should do without necessarily having to ask a human every single time. Significant speed bumps, other than getting the theme and design sorted out, are using the software catalog. So at the moment, we focused on documentation first. That was our main goal. So the guides, which is a bit of a net new thing for us, and then integrating tech docs, as Jeff addressed. We are looking at the software catalog and the templates system, but that's on our roadmap. That's probably in the second half of this year. So we're just starting our exploration there. Show example of tech docs on your portal. At the moment, we don't have anything. It looks pretty rudimentary. If you can imagine what tech docs looks like in Backstage, but with the TELUS look and feel on it, that's essentially where we're at right now. We're sort of in the middle of doing that decoupling of the source of the data to the presentation layer. How many core team members did you have during the development phase? I think from the on the ThoughtWorks side, we had probably about 10 people on the team, I think, that all told. And that also includes information architecture, project management, design, UX, and development. And then on the TELUS side, we've had about 5 or 6 people, I believe. So yeah, so this is the core team. There's a few other people on here that were on the team earlier in the project and that have moved on to other things. But right now, that's about the size.
Yeah, and I'd say about a third are supporting the team, but this isn't their primary focus.
So at the moment, the systems are separate. So Contentful and GitHub are two sort of sources of truth for our documentation, and we do want to maintain it that way. From talking to some of our developer teams, some developers do prefer to continue to work in GitHub. So we're trying to not be prescriptive. We're trying not to force anyone into one specific thing or to have people have to duplicate their documentation, say, into Contentful. So teams that have existing documentation in GitHub, that's the work that we're doing now to try to figure out how to integrate that. And as Jeff mentioned, part of the challenge we've had is that some of this documentation is not just code, is not just docs for the code in the repo. In some cases, the repo is the documentation. We have one particular GitHub repo that has probably a good between 50 and 70 markdown files that all cross-link to each other. And that team is pretty adamant about continuing to manage it in GitHub. So we're trying to accommodate that.
And one call out is with documentation, it's hard enough to keep it updated. The last thing you want to do is have to update it in 2 different spots. That's sort of a guarantee to get out of sync. So we're making a very concerted effort to make sure to let the documents live in one and only one spot and figure out how to share it as a single pane of glass.
Did we create our own MK docs? So we're working with the Backstage one, we're working with the core tech docs plugin and the functionality that's in there. So we are still using the flow of pushing the documentation into a bucket. For us, it's in GCP. And then what we're building is sort of a presentation layer to abstract how that documentation is presented. Our goal long-term is to have a unified documentation interface where all the docs are in one place and are sort of categorized using taxonomies versus being separated in different sections of the portal, but that where the documentation lives is sort of presentation independent. Did you bring in React components from your internal design system alongstage the Backstage one? So we did not. That was definitely a discussion that was had early on, but we realized that as I mentioned, we wanted to be able to use Backstage sort of quote unquote out of the box as much as possible. And so the decision was made to adapt our design system and to basically sort of create the theme and use Backstage's components and not use our React components. And there was some initial sort of, I guess, hesitation about that, but in the end, I think it turned out quite well.
So there's a question in metrics that I think is interesting. So they're asking about what kinds of metrics did we look at about the portal. So like we would measure a typical website, we're interested in things like how many people visit a site, how long would they pay attention to it. We're also interested in feedback. And so one of the things that we do is very intentionally collect feedback on the documentation that shows up in the site so that we can use the interaction with our internal customers for the guides to be able to modify and add things. And so we're intentionally collecting feedback contextually on our pages.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the challenges we've had, I think, like any large enterprise, is keeping documentation up to date. And in a lot of cases, the consumer of the documentation is the first one to find out that something is out of date when they look at it and they try to use it, and it's no longer accurate. So we've built in a feedback loop and sort of tied ownership to documentation so that a user can very quickly point out something that is inaccurate or up to date or incomplete within the portal. At the moment, that's integrated into Slack with us, so it kind of drops a message into a Slack channel where all of our content authors are. So that's how we're doing that. Rough breakdown of the team with regarding to skill sets. So I would say it's a mix. We probably had a good 5 or 6, I would say, software engineers, and then designers, product owners, QA, UX. Just the sort of the typical gamut for a project team.
Well, hey, I'll answer this next one, Seb.
Sure.
So I'm the manager for this group of people. So how we pitched this was basically, so I run our platform teams. We're the engineering productivity team. Our whole a reason for existing is developer efficacy and efficiency. It was actually a pretty easy pitch because we know the problem of how hard it is with lost docs, and it's been a recurring theme of how slow it can be for a new developer to start. And so somebody's saying we have sort of a stated goal of cutting sort of first release to prod from about a month to less than a week via having better documentation and better tooling in the portal. That pitch is pretty compelling for an organization that desperately wants to do things faster. So in many ways, pretty easy to get the buy-in and have that done. How big TELUS is? So TELUS is 28,000 full-time people. Its engineering group spread across, I think, 8 departments is about 8,000, I believe. And so those are our sort of addressable customers in this. Rolled out currently to the 2 main developer organizations, one of which is 500, TELUS Digital, where we sit, and our sort of internal operations engineering group, which I think is that again. I'm not actually sure. So about 800 or so developers and related disciplines as well.
All right. Any more questions to Jeff, Sebastian, Lisa, and Steve, I guess? It's been a lovely, lively discussion, I have to admit. A lot of great questions. And thanks again for sharing your journey. Very insightful. Yeah. Maybe the last one we'll take. Any integration with Kubernetes?
Not yet, but hopefully soon. So as one of the things we pointed out, our next set of work is very much tying in, I'm going to call it the engineering tooling within Backstage, kicking off apps, the sort of app service directory, things like this. That's very much the focus now that we've had the initial set of documentation. So hopefully by end of year, we'll have some of that.
Thanks again for the demo and for the rapid fire, answering all the questions.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you for having us. That's been great. Thank you, everybody, for asking all the questions.
Yeah, thanks all.
Great stuff. And I believe it's time for a quick update from maintainers. What's going on? What's going on with the catalog?
Sure, I can take that. So yeah, the team has been quite busy over the last couple of weeks in basically redesigning the internals of the software catalog. I'm going to be a bit technical, so sorry about that if that's not your cup of tea, but basically the current software catalog refreshes locations like you pointing to a YAML file containing information about your service. We call that entity inside the catalog. That all currently happens like in a big bang. So all the locations that you have pointing to your different GitHub repositories get refreshed at the same time, which is not very scalable if you run if you have a lot of locations basically. So what we've done sort of behind the scenes is to create a more distributed refresh loop. So instead of refreshing all at once, we basically store a timestamp for when the entity should be refreshed again, meaning we could have multiple workers refreshing all of these locations. So we're not bombarding and like reaching API limits for GitHub and what have you if you're spinning up more and more catalogs. This is all groundwork for us to work on the next thing, which is cacheable processing. So we also want to reduce the amount of work that the refresh loop has to do. So we want to be able to store state with the processing engine. So the catalog processor will be able to store information about what it did last time, check whatever it needs to do an update or not, basically using existing primitives such as e-tags and GitHub to check whatever I need to fetch the YAML file and do the reprocessing or not, just to speed up and make sure that we could scale the catalog. This is also fixing some requested features from before, like deletions should in the new catalog work a lot better. We're able to detect if an entity or like a service you register, if that is no longer referenced by any location, we will display a warning saying that this is out of sync and you should probably take some action. Yeah, we've come quite far. We hope that we'll have something for you guys to test if you're interested in helping out in the coming week or so. We'll try to publish an issue on GitHub with some instruction for you so you can help us to do the testing. For a regular user, this is supposed to work just as before. So it's the internals that we're changing. And please chime in any of the other maintainers if you have things to add.
Yeah, I'm thinking not to build too much premature hype, but it also lays some groundwork for doing things like event-driven updates using webhooks and similar in the future. It also splits apart things a little bit so that we can distinguish between what is a source of things that go into the catalog from the processing loops, so that you can easier build sources whose the thing they put in the catalog are instantly reflected. But what I mean with this is that, like, it used to be that things became orphaned in the past because you ingested, for example, 2,000 users, and then the user leaves the company. Now we have one user lingering. And now things are rewritten such that you can make sources where it perfectly updates based on your input data, and automatically things get removed when they get removed in the authoritative source and so on. So there's a couple of things that are going to be good for the future there, but maybe not everyone will benefit from day one, but we have the foundations to build even better things on top of.
Thank you, Bastian and Fredrik. There is a question in the chat about pushing entities to the catalog. David was wondering if we're going to support that in the newest edition.
Yeah, so that's actually, I'm a bit careful with mentioning that use case, but yes, the way that I mentioned these sources, yes, it will be possible to make a source like that, which is essentially just like we now post locations, as a user-driven event, post a location, please keep up doing this. It will be possible to write one source, which also stores just YAML data, like you post an actual entity. Here's the thing, I give it to you now, hold on to it for me. It's not something that we probably will supply out of the box, but let's keep talking, because that will be actually probably a perfectly valid use case, but it will be detached from the core catalog functionality, which is something we wanted to sort of achieve. We didn't want to have that kind of thing inside the core, and now we've sort of successfully made it such that it should be possible to build as an auxiliary function, just like the locations storage.
All right. Thank you both. Yeah, I guess it's time for another demo we have planned for today. Emma Bagu, who's gonna present.
I'll present. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this RFC on the new homepage. I see there's some discussions around like catalog being the homepage right now and the need for a new homepage. And we do have a separate homepage inside of Spotify. And we recently did an upgrade. We rolled out a new homepage. So I'm just going to share this new homepage for inspiration. By no means this is going to be the default experience. The idea in the open source is going to be, like some people have suggested in the RFC, to have a separate plugin, homepage plugin. That's just going to be composable with any components that you want to put there. So you can customize it to the needs of your organization. But here I'm just going to walk through what we have at Spotify right now. So the homepage, as we see at Spotify, is a quick way to navigate to many different things. It's not tied down to your ownership. So here we have this quick access widget, which shows you, it has a bunch of links, which is frequently visited, recently visited, and things that you favorited within the application. I think some of these are still like favoriting. I'm not sure if it's still part of the open source. And then we also have other quick links to other tools that we use within Spotify, which is the toolbox, and that's grouped by each discipline. And then other smaller widgets of functionality that we have. And the reason I wanted to share this homepage is the discussions in the RFC are towards what do we show in the homepage, and that should be totally up to the organization to decide what works best. But I do want to call out one difference that we have at Spotify, which is the homepage, and we also have something called the manage. You might have seen this page from earlier screenshots from last year of Backstage. This is essentially, the manage is essentially the page where we have all the things that are related to the squad, like what things I own, or what are all the actionable things that I can do from here. And we do see homepage as being that one a navigation place where you can click on any of these links, or for example, search for something that you're looking for in Backstage. To give a bit of history on why it is this way, we also started with the homepage having all the ownership team-related content, but then it was too narrow. Like, you always end up seeing your own stuff. There was not an easy way for you to explore other software entities inside your catalog. Like that was one reason, and the other one being this did not. And that model did not scale and cater to all profiles of users in user profiles in Backstage. Like, for example, if you're an engineer, I think having the PRs and what services you own or incidents is really great. But what if you're a manager or a manager of managers? Like, what is the view that you're going to get out of your team page? So that's kind of the philosophy behind why we moved towards a separate homepage that's more navigational, letting you explore and discover more parts of Backstage. Of course, you can favorite all of your own services here and still reach them. So, and we have a separate manage page where you can look at all of your team related stuff. So in summary, I just wanted to share the new homepage to say the right way to go about this would be to have a separate plugin that's just customizable. We may ship some of these components in the future in the open source that you can reuse to build your own homepage. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share on the RFC. Yeah.
Thanks, Raghu. There are a couple of questions we just got in the chat. So David is asking, are frequently visited and recently visited widgets coming as a part of this update?
So this update is just rolled out inside of Spotify. So we don't have a roadmap yet on when this will reach production, but some forms of these widgets would reach in stages. Probably there'll be just an empty canvas of homepage first with some default content, and then probably these components will come in the later stages. So we don't have a plan for the update yet, but we are thinking about it, and we'll update the roadmap on that.
Good stuff. Yeah, now Oliver is asking if we should probably split the RFC into two parts.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oliver is asking if we should split the RFC into two parts. I guess the original RFC we had on that issue.
I still do see there is case for a separate manage page, but I think it depends on the organization. Like if your organization is just going to use Backstage for engineers, I don't see a reason why you would have two separate. Like it's totally up to the organization. We want this to be customizable, not we're not very strongly opinionated there. So maybe it makes sense, maybe not. I'm not really sure there.
Yeah, there was a question from James as well.
Yep.
But yeah, somewhat surprised that managers get less value from the squad page.
Yes, right. So I think for a manager of managers, I think at that stage, like it's just too many number of components that are service software components that you have to look at, and it becomes too much information. So we do have other plugins, like something I think is going to be talked about later, which is Tech Insights, that gives the tech health of it gives an overview of the tech health of your organization. So if you're a manager of managers, you would probably want to look at metrics like that. Ongoing migrations or any other upgrades that your teams are supposed to do. Those are the views that so if you look at manage, like for a manager of managers, probably this section is what makes more sense. Like what kind of migrations the team is going through right now, and what is my org right now. So some details like that are useful for those kind of users. Are there plans to open source a manage page? I think, yeah, again, I'm not really sure at this point. I'm not able to promise if you will open source a manage page, but that's for the future. So yes, homepage is customizable. So if it's I think it's up to the Backstage administrator or integrator, so to decide what is going to be the default. So it will be configurable in the app.
Could add, when it comes to manage page and home page and explore and so on, that it's possible that we would add that to the project as a collection of tools and widgets, cards to display it, and let the organization build their own pages and decide what they need. So you could you get the tools you need to build a manage page quite easily instead. But there might not be a manage page plugin specifically. There might be more of documented patterns for people to use, but that is also a possible future.
Yeah, I think the way we want to go is customizable pages, and all of these shipped as components that you could pick and choose, rather than have strict opinions on what pages does the application have. Let me know if I'm missing any question. Will I be able to look at the manage page and KPIs representing another team? We don't have this currently in. So there's one way you can do this. Like for example, if you take the docs, tech docs example, you have a separate space where there is docs, and there's also docs that is attached to the entities. There are two places where you can see docs. In a similar way, you can also have a separate Tech Insights plugin and also Tech Insights that are attached to your entity. So there might be a way where you can see this for the other orgs as well. And we actually do have that inside Spotify, where there's a separate Tech Insights page where you can drill down to any org, but that's being deprecated. That'll move away more and more into where you can see it along with the entities. Personally, customizable homepage widget seems like the ideal future for all people. You're definitely reading our roadmap, I guess. That's coming, but it's far away.
Yeah, I guess the next one is how useful having search function is on the homepage, and if we have any insights about navigation.
So search is still, there's a heavy usage of search that we know from the data that we have. And it also seems like the primary way there's a lot of high intent searches that happen. Like people most times know what they're looking for, or have an idea of something like a prefix or something that's related to music, or there's something that they know. and search is like the go-to place for them to quickly get the results. So we wanted to make it more prominent and see if it really increases. Like one thing that my squad is trying to solve is nobody should say I cannot find something. And since we see search being used a lot, we are promoting search even more in the homepage to make sure people get to what they want to get as soon as possible. So yeah. Does the search box utilize the search? Not yet, but that's the, so the question is, does the search box utilize the search plugin in the open source? The search plugin in the open source is still very much in development. It's not in the usable version yet. It's getting there. But the idea eventually is to use the same plugin for this one. It follows the same structure internally, but they are two separate plugins, but they'll be merged in the future.
All right. Thank you, Raghu and Pulp Fiction.
Yep.
Exciting update. And that brings us to the GitHub specific questions that we have. I'm just going to paste the link once again around here for those who joined late. And yeah, we have a bit over 10 minutes to go over the questions that we had there. So there was a question around homepage that Raghu, I think, just addressed. Another specific one from Phil was around the Tech Insights plugin. Let's see, yeah, the question is somewhat open-ended. Phil, I'm not sure if you're on the call and if you're willing to elaborate. So for now, it's just like, I would be interested in hearing thoughts regarding homepage and Tech Insights plugin. And there is one more down the line about hearing more on cost insights and any experience in other companies implementing it with Backstage. Anyone on this call have an experience with cost insights and willing to share?
The only thing I would add is what was it? Red Monk did a great article about cost insights recently, which you may have seen, and it has a video interview with the product manager behind cost insights at Spotify. I thought it was very interesting, and she talks through how it's implemented there, and it's probably the best resource I've personally seen. So just would give a shout out to that.
Yeah, good shout out. Thanks, Austin, for the link. All right, shall we move on to the next one then, maybe, if no more thoughts on the Tech Insights? Yeah, there was a question from Marco regarding the best way to update the standalone app. Yeah, is there any best practices to follow on structuring the standalone app customization so it's easy to stay up to date? And yeah, Adam just replied with the bit of documentation that we have around keeping Backstage updated. But if there's anything more to be discussed on the topic, just shout.
Yeah, if the create app changelog is the place to go and find all of the changes that we do. So whenever we do changes to the standalone app, we try to document them in the create app changelog and provide guides for how to update existing applications. That's the go-to best way right now. Keep an eye on that whenever you bump versions of things. We are constantly searching for better ways to get that done. So hopefully we can evolve that process.
Yeah, I think we shipped one very small change last week with when you bump the versions, it will tell you the version it went from and to. So that might be a little easier for you to find out the current change logs that apply to you, for you to help you update your versions rather than searching.
All right, thank you for the suggestions. Yeah, if we had more docs and cost insights, yeah, absolutely. Perhaps at some point there will be a bit more on that front. Yeah, and I guess that brings us to the end of, oh, no, there is some more. There is some more questions that we just added a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, there is a question from Thomas. Is there any plans to document how we work with backend plugins? Who wants to take this one?
I guess it's quite an open question. Are you on the call? Can you elaborate a little bit more? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, honestly, nothing specific I'm looking for. I've just seen that documentation page I linked there, just saying to do, and I'm excited for all the possibilities that could be there. And just wondering what to expect or hope for or dream about.
I guess we can say that we've taken a very hands-off approach when it comes to backend plugins. So far, we're not trying to build much of a framework there right now. So obviously that documentation page needs a bit more information. We'll get sure to fill that out.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's documented somewhere, but we do have the create plugin -- backend, which will give you a skeleton of one, which I can't remember what's actually in there, but it's a little bit of boilerplate for you to get set up with a backend-ish plugin that you can add to the backend router. Just instead of you creating all the boilerplate from scratch and copying it from like the catalog or scaffolder or somewhere, it just kind of sets all that up for you. But yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, to fill in regarding that hands-off approach, I mean, it's kind of intentional that we want to see patterns form before establishing anything that looks like a complete plugin interface and so on. So one day it might happen, but for this at this point, you wire things up a little bit more, manually. And as we learn and as we get feedback on that, we might start putting more patterns in place, something that looks more like a plugin interface there as well, like on the front end.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Right, and the last one we have on the list, and probably the last one we'll have time to take today, is from James Russ, asking about experience of other teams adopting Backstage and what are they focusing on, like what's the good first step or good first plugin. TELUS focused on docs, and Rex were focused. You guys are focusing on the catalog and scaffolder first. Any recommendations? Any piece of wisdom for James here? Yeah, I guess like I can talk from Spotify perspective a little bit. The general recommendation that we give for good first step is to start small and start with something that actually solves your biggest problems. For some companies, it's definitely catalog, just being able to visualize that sort of the warehouse of stuff that you sit on top of. Is actually quite helpful if like standardization is more of a problem for your organization, that maybe scaffolding is the way to bring some alignment into your work. But yeah, please shout out if you had any other experiences of like the first steps with Backstage in your work.
This is Adam. I'll just share from my side. Sorry, I'll turn on my video. The thing I see a lot, and I've seen it at a couple different companies now, is the whole idea of project to product is I think more difficult than a lot of people think. I know there's a lot of blog posts about it all over the internet, but the number of teams that I work with that think they have a product, but actually they keep talking about, well, we're done next week when we do this thing and we move on somewhere else, is substantial. And I think we keep looking at Backstage to try to figure out, can we drive that understanding of a sort of a sphere of accountability, that I own this product, soup to nuts, from dev to production operations. I don't hand it off, the true dev throwing it over the wall to ops. And we're really trying to use the catalog to kind of drive that maturity and how our teams kind of define their scrum teams, their squads, and their product boundaries.
Thanks, Adam. Super helpful. Yeah, and we'll definitely have to start the jokes channel on Discord. It's been in great demand, I think. All right. Any ad hoc last minute questions, anything that just came to your mind that you wanted to talk about? Yeah, just maybe on the closing note, there is, as per usual, there is a feedback form. I just pasted it in the chat. We would love to hear from you about the experience of joining community sessions. Once again, appreciate the time and energy you all bring to this meeting. It's so exciting every time for us to participate, and we'll be looking forward to see you all soon. All right. Thanks, everybody. Till next time.